Και γύρισε η Ροαμνού να πάρει την οδόν της. Η Ροαφνού εγύρισεν της Ρώσης και λέει: «Άδε την προπρόσωπη την αναρκοδοντούσαν, άδε την κυκλομέτωπη την μούτη του τορνάρι, το πετινάρι το φραχνό, την κυκλομαλούσαν».
And Ροαμνού turned back to go on her way. Ροαφνού turned to make fun of the queen, saying, "Look at that ugly-faced one with teeth widely spaced, her nose pointed like a turner's lathe."
On Friday, February 17th, the cultural organization CYPRECO of America revived unique aspects of the Cypriot folklore with the presentation of a very successful program, which also celebrated the contributions of the late Lucy Maroulleti to the cultural and folk arts of Cyprus. The event featured folk stories and folk poems of Cyprus as compiled and published by the late Lucy Maroulleti, a mini documentary highlighting Lucy's work, and an exceptional musical performance with local artists. The folk stories and poems were presented in the Cypriot Dialect by Polys Kyriakou and in English by your host Elena Maroulleti from Lucy's books Once Upon a Time, Folk Stories My Grandmother Told Me, and Cypriot Folk Poems 900 to 1900 AD. Once Upon a Time and Cypriot folk poems are considered exceptional and important books because Lucy was the first to translate these stories and poems from the Cypriot dialect into English, while most of them do not exist in any other publication. In her English translation, Lucy adhered strictly to the original text without any adaptations or improvements. Both books comprise today an invaluable point of reference for anyone who wants to know about the folk stories and poems of rural Cyprus. In a big turnout, members and leaders of the Cypriot and Greek-American community, members from the general audience, including many distinguished Greek and Cypriot officials, dignitaries, and elected officials, attended the event, which also coincided with the late Lucy Maroulleti's birthday. Following the welcoming remarks, a mini-documentary was shown dedicated to Lucy and to her important contributions to the promotion of the culture and folklore of Cyprus and Greece in America through her work with CYPRECO of America, of which she was a co-founder, as well as through her poetry, novels, plays, her acting, her storytelling, and her award-winning literary translations from Greek into English and from English into Greek. Polys Kyriakou, a well-known Cypriot American poet and lyricist and a close friend of Lucy, also celebrated her important contributions with a special tribute, which also included the recital of a poem he had written in her memory on the occasion of this event.
Σε ένα υπόγειο μικρό, βαθιά, πολύ βαθιά, με βράχια και αμπάρια και ναυάγια, με κύματα μιας παραλίας ξεχασμένης. Μνήμη τη μνήμη, μάχη τη μάχη, αιώνα τον αιώνα. Εσύ σε ένα υπόγειο μικρό. Πατρίδες τρεις. Και η ξενιτιά στη ξενιτιά. Η ξενιτιά που έθρεψε την Αμόχωστο. Η ξενιτιά που κράτησε την Αμόχωστο με δάκρυ και αίμα. Και η γλώσσα τούτη, η ελληνική. Αχ, πόσο βαριά ετούτα τα βιβλία. Θαρώ εκείνο εκεί το καφετί με τα κυπριακά τραγούδια να είναι το πιο βαρύ. Ασήκωτη μικρή πατρίδα. Λένε πως από τα αρχαία ελληνικά και από τη σκλαβιά τα πράγματα μπορεί να δυναμώνουν. Οι πέτρες να γίνονται βράχοι. Οι 15 σύλλαβοι να γίνονται θρησκεία και λιγμός. Ακόμα λένε πως η σιωπή των αγνοωμένων μπορεί να είναι κοφτερή φωνή και σίδερο, σπαθιά και κανόνια. Μάνα της έρημης, κουρασμένης πατρίδας, διάβασε μου και πάλι εκείνη τη στροφή. Πες μου τα λόγια του Λιπέρτη, δείξε μου τη ζωγραφιά του Κάσαλου. Εγώ λέω σιγά σιγά να βάλω στο γραμμόφωνο την κερίνια του Καραγιώργη και ύστερα να διαβάσουμε μαζί το ποίημα για τη Χρυσή Αμμωδιά ενός νέου Κυπρίου ποιητή. Εσύ σε ένα μικρό υπόγειο. Μάνα της έρμης μοιρασμένης γης. Αν θες να ξέρεις, στις ειδήσεις δεν λένε πια ούτε λέξη για την Αμόχωστο. Ούτε πως το καράβι μας είναι ακόμα ελληνικό. Αν θες να ξέρεις, τα τραγούδια λιγόστεψαν και τα υπόγεια της ψυχής μας μάτωσαν. Και οι λίγοι είναι ακόμα πιο λίγοι. Αν θες να ξέρεις, λίγοι, ελάχιστοι κρατούν ακόμα τον χάρτη, εκείνο τον ολόκληρο χάρτη που δεν μοιράζει την πατρίδα μας στα δυο.
Among the folk stories which were recited were the sleeping princess, the ghoul and the snake, and the merchant. These are stories which survived orally through a span of 1,000 or more years and which have traveled through the mouths of mostly illiterate and older people in rural Cyprus. However, apart from the entertaining part, they each convey very strong messages about mankind and the challenges we face and how we should always choose good versus evil, kindness versus greed, love versus hate, among others.
One day she remembered the ring her father had brought her. She thought that she ought to wear it because it was a present from her father and the only thing to remember him by. So she rubbed and cleaned it and put it on her finger. She felt a little dizzy when she put it on, and then she found herself in the old ruined place where her father had told her that he had lost the ring. I must be dreaming, she thought. No, you're not, said the snake, which had wriggled out of his hole. Unless you have come. Why were you so late? It's such a long time since your father left. My father died. Anyway, what am I doing here? How did I come here? I brought you here. The ring rather brought you. When you put it on, I gave it to your father to make you come. I am so lonely. The snake drew up its head opposite hers and she saw that it was crying. Oh, no, don't cry, please. I have been lonely too since my mother and then my father died. I know how it feels. I have been lonely for a much more longer time. Would you stay with me, please? Well, why not? Since you can't talk, we'll keep each other company. I knew you were a nice person since that day when you did not kill me, and instead you took care of me, said the snake. Don't tell me that you're the same snake. You have grown so much. Well, I changed my size according to circumstances, it said critically. But this is a very miserable place to stay. We'd better move. We go to my place, she offered. No. We'll go to my place, and if you don't like it, then we can move to your place. Immediately they found themselves in an exquisite palace. Do you like it? Asked the snake. Why not? Although I'm used to my house in the fields and I would feel more comfortable there. We can go there if you like it better. But let us first stay here for some time. And so they stayed and they never left. Do I have to tell you that, of course, the snake was a bewitched prince who, because of the love and kindness of the merchant's daughter, was transformed back again into the beautiful prince he had sometimes been, and that they lived happily ever after? But I have to tell you that the two sisters never married the city gentleman they expected to come along for them because they were very choosy and they always felt that no one was good enough for them. So they remained old maids. And in the end, they returned to their house in the country after they squandered their father's fortune. And that they also had to till the fields and plant vegetables and herbs to survive, and they never found out where their youngest sister had gone. So not everybody lived ever after, but all the stories do not end the same manner, do they?
The folk poems which were selected were from the series Folk Poems Found Only in Cyprus, featuring the legendary poem of Arodafnousa, and poems on Haron, that is death, featuring the poem of Christalou and Haron. As in the folk stories, these poems also survived orally over the centuries by word of mouth, and they too convey similar messages about mankind.
Που κάτω φόρησε γρουσά, που πάνω γρουσταλένα. Τέλεια που πάνω φόρησε χρυσά, μαλαματένα. Κατέβασε την Καζακχάν και σέπασε τα τέλεια. Πιάνει το γίνον το στρατήν, τσίνει το μονοπάτι, χρυσό μήλο στο χέρι της και παίζει το και πάει. Κι όσον και πιάνει το σκαλί, και σύστην και λιίστη, κι όσον και φκένει πανωθιόν, ελευτοκανατζίστη, που τη θωρεί ρίσα προσηκώθηκε της. Έναν καντήρο ρόστευμα έγινεν και νευσεν της. Εγώ είδα και τρόμαξα. Κι άνθρωπος πώς να κάνει.
Appropriate to her shortness and comfortable to her stride, she wore first a golden dress, then one like crystal. And she wore on top of everything one pure gold. She pulled her cap over them and covered them completely. She started walking along the road and then along the lane, holding a golden apple in her hands and tossing it up her way. When she reached the stairway, she was lithe and lissom, and when she reached the top of it, graceful and charming. The queen at her side stood up respectfully to meet her. She poured a jug of rose water for her to wash her face. I saw you, and I was thrilled. How can a man resist you?
After the presentation followed greeting messages from the newly appointed Consul General of Greece to New York, Mr. Georgios Iliopoulos, the Consul General of Cyprus to New York, Mrs. Koula Sofianou, the President of the Federation of Hellenic Societies, Mr. Ilias Segeridis, and the Vice President of the Cyprus Federation, Mr. Chris Nicolaou. All speakers praised CYPRECO for its ongoing dedication in bringing to the community unique programs which celebrate the rich history, culture, and folklore of Cyprus. They also spoke with utmost admiration about the work of the late Lucy Maroulleti, which was presented.
The two folk stories that you recited to us, they were very interesting. They were talking about princess and queens, but let us not forget that there's one queen in Cyprus, and that is Amochostos Vasilevousa. And Amochostos, the city of Amochostos, is under Turkish occupation. And that's a real story, that's not a folk story. And it's empty, it's abandoned, only the Turkish troops have access there, and it's waiting for us, and it's waiting Lucy Maroulleti. If we're honoring Lucy Maroulleti, I think the first thing we have to do is to continue her struggle, to return to Amochostos. I haven't met her, but I've met so many people that knew her. And every time I tell them that I come from Amochostos, they always go, people here, they ask me, do you know Lucy Maroulleti? Because she would tell everybody that she was so proud to come from Amochostos, that she was a refugee from Amochostos, and that her dream was to go back and continue, she was always, of course, to go back to a free, reunited Cyprus. And we should not forget that. And that's the best and the most important that we can do for her.
And what she understood, what is so important, is that she took everything from the past and brought it alive through her art. And that is a rarity in people, and she did it so well. I learned a lot about the Cypriot people just by listening to 2 stories and 2 poems. Imagine what we can learn by reading her books. And she left a beautiful legacy, and the strongest part of her legacy is on the left of me, her daughter. Thank you for all of your work. Maryland's because as a Greek American woman, yeah, we've worked together for years and years, and Elena never gives up the fight for a free Cyprus, justice and freedom for all. I thank you very much. This was a beautiful event.
The program concluded with a concert that included selected songs by great Greek composers such as Manos Hatzidakis. In a very unique performance, Greek-American singer Faye, accompanied on the keyboards by the well-known musician and composer Glafkos Kontemeniotis, truly moved the audience with her passionate interpretation of the songs. The multi-talented and multi-awarded Lucy Maroulleti was born in Egypt by Cypriot parents and moved to Cyprus in the early 1940s during the Second World War, and she lived there until the Turkish invasion of 1974, which forced her to leave her ancestral lands in the north and become a refugee along with some 200,000 other Greek Cypriots. She moved with her family in London for a year, and in 1975, she immigrated to America and settled in Astoria, New York, where she lived until her death in 2005. She was recognized in America as well as abroad for her many years of devotion to the promotion and preservation of the rich folklore and culture of Cyprus and Greece. Lucy held a certificate of proficiency in Greek and in English from the Cambridge University in London, England, and she has translated many famous Greek contemporary poets as well as ancient playwrights, while her work has been published in several newspapers and magazines, both here in the United States, in Cyprus, and in England. Lucy Maroulleti passed away on October 11, 2005, and she will be sorely missed by many. Always with a burning curiosity of life itself and the desire to share her unique and insightful visions with all those around her, Lucy opened her heart and focused her thoughts and spirit on the profound. As with many before her throughout the centuries, Lucy Maroulleti endured severe hardships in life, but never once did she cease to smile upon and recite upon the beauty and profundity of life. Lucy left this world with a warm and knowing smile on her face. CYPRECO's new folk arts program was under the auspices of the Cyprus Federation of America, and it was made possible in part through the generous support of the Arch Capital Group US, Inc., the New York City Department of Cultural Affairs, the Cyprus Federation of America, and Astoria Federal Savings Bank, Ditmars branch in Astoria, New York. CYPRECO's volunteer team included Tom Stouras, Caroline Ioannou, Penny Chapman, Michael Tribunella, Polis Kyriakou, and your host as the executive producer of the program.
Σ' αγαπήσανε στον κόσμο βασιλιάδες ποιητές κι ένα χλωνεράκι δυόσμο δεν τους χάρισες ποτέ. Είσαι σκληρή σαν το θανάτου τη γροθιά, μα ήρθαν καιροί που σε τους πότισες ποτέ. Είσαι σκληρή